Hello everyone, and welcome to our first Business Connections and Community for 2022. In today's episode, we take a crystal ball view of what's ahead for the year. We travel to the Eastern Seaboard to meet one of our members who is making people strong. And finally, in our connection section, we take a trip well back down memory lane to meet a former executive director from 25 years ago. Stay with us. Welcome back. In our business section today, we welcome Matthew Cutt, partner at BDO Thailand, who's going to give us a crystal ball view of what we can expect this year. Matt, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks Brendan. Good to be on, thanks.
Excellent. So Matt, before we look at 2022, can you set the scene by taking us back to this time last year? Things were a bit different, right?
Yeah, very different actually, wasn't it? Because if you think back to 12 months ago, you know, we were just going into another lockdown over Christmas and New Year. There was no real clear pathway on the vaccines and what that meant, so it was a very uncertain time last year. Roll that forward 12 months and you know, the vaccine has been rolled out, people are having boosters, and the business sentiment generally is that, you know, this new Omicron variant perhaps, you know, isn't as concerning and things are sort of moving forward a bit better. So certainly a better position here today than we were 12 months ago.
We are. There is a lot more confidence. We're all aware that it's around, but the feeling of getting going is obviously there. Now, we've had many chats over the past 2 years about various things. One of the things we've often talked about are your winners and losers that have come out of COVID. Yeah. Can you give us just an overview of who they are?
Sure. And I think, you know, it's interesting because, again, going back 2 years ago when it first locked down, is, you know, pretty much every business was being crippled in that short term, and then as things sort of slowly change, you know, certain industries are able to better cope with the situation than others. So, I mean, if you think about Thailand's tourism industry, for example, well, the borders have just been shut, really, haven't they, until the sort of sandbox and the November sort of test and go, which ultimately got cancelled. Manufacturing's been hit hard mainly by global supply chains, so shortages in semiconductors globally has impacted, you know, and also just the way sort of freight forward and shipping is at the minute. It's expensive, it's longer, so, you know, the supply chain issue in manufacturing has just been heavily disrupted. Yeah, I guess you look at then some of the winners. Well, the agriculture industry has sort of fared well still. Mm-hmm. Tech obviously has been a clear winner throughout the globe, really, and then you know, finance and insurance as well, because people are a lot more thinking around, you know, insurance products to protect health and things. So yeah, so whilst, you know, been a lot of sad stories, there's still been some positives that have come through in various aspects.
There are, and I'll just provide a sneak peek into our next section in Connection, someone who's done well in the Health and Fitness Centre as well out of it, but we'll leave that for the next section.
Okay, cool.
Well, let's look forward now to 2022. Things do feel different. What can we expect?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest thing for me on a business level sort of here is how ASEAN sort of opens those borders up in a sort of consistent manner. So, yeah. You know, it's fair to say that Thailand, as of 1st of February, you know, the test and go is back on, which in theory will allow tourism to come. And I guess from a business perspective, though, you know, you've got regional businesses here, you're coming from Australia, you want to be able to do business at a regional level. Right. So we sort of need other countries to sort of, you know, align to that. So obviously Philippines, as of the 10th, I think, started to open up. Yep. We've now got the corridor lane between Singapore and Bangkok. Right. So I think certainly, you know, as things open up consistently regional, that will generate that not only that tourism but just business activity generally.
Okay.
You know, we have seen transactions are on a record high,
Right.
Principally driven by private equity who are really looking to take advantage of certain industries or get into certain industries. You know, so that's a big one. It's very much still a watching brief on the supply chain issue and shipping, and I think that's going to take its time to sort of roll through, which will impact. And I guess, you know, what it's seen is businesses look at different options to do business. So rather than the sort of offshore manufacturing, it is kind of the concept of sort of onshore, nearshore and offshore to look to de-risk those operations. And also to de-risk suppliers. So rather than just being reliant on one supplier, maybe I'm trying to de-risk that by having multiple options and things to get through that.
Okay.
You know, I guess the real interesting one and positive one is this concept of work from anywhere, or you know, so you know, we see a lot of inquiries come through now to say, you know, we're part of a global organisation. We have employees wanting to come and live and work in Thailand. There's a lot of like complexities with that,
Right.
Not only from a tax perspective, but also from you know, personal data or private data that could cross border. Often insurances, so you know, you're covered by employees' health cover, but you're overseas. Is that still valid or not? So there's lots of complexities with it. Thailand are obviously looking to make it easier by the 10-year visa, which allows the work permit and things like that. So they're obviously very conscious that this is coming and trying to move with practical ways to have people work here as well.
But it can be difficult, right? Because often the laws, quite rightly, you don't want to change laws overnight, but the laws and regulations can't keep up with the movements in trends. And this is a good example, isn't it? Of, people quite simply, well, why don't I go sit in Phuket, for example, for 6 months, but it's not always that easy.
No, and we've certainly seen a big shift of that into Thailand, where you know, there's some beautiful places here to go and do those sort of workations, I guess they're called, aren't they? But there's also a realization that there is risk associated with doing that, and so businesses and you know, law is trying to quickly catch up to make sure they de-risk themselves.
But I guess some advice for our viewers: until the regulations do catch up, make sure you're across it before you do it. Because it's not simply a matter of going somewhere and thinking, oh, I'm working here now.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we get a lot of inquiries come through, particularly around when Sandbox came in and things like that. And I think, you know, we are seeing large corporates define what working from anywhere means, and there's different models and things, but it's certainly here to stay, I think. And one of the big sort of outcomes of what's happened over the last 2 years is, you know, not this fixation perhaps to be in an office every day and have some variation.
Good. You mentioned transactions before. Have there been any changes in the nature of big transactions?
Sure. I think, you know, one of the compelling things we're seeing on a transaction level is more and more the need to have social and corporate responsibility embedded in what you do on a day-to-day business. If you're large hedge funds, large pension funds, those types of things, you know, they've got very, very strict requirements now on the type of business they can invest in. So that is driving behaviour, because you know, corporate and social responsibility is not just, I guess, the right thing to do, but it actually does add a lot of value to your business, which I think people are realising as well. So doing the right thing actually, you know, is the way to do it, I guess. So,
So it's going a lot deeper into planting a tree or donating food, which are also valuable activities, but it has to go a lot deeper.
Absolutely, I guess it's about, you know, not just looking at even your suppliers, your customers, you know, are you transacting with the right people that do the right thing as well? So it's all the way through the supply chain, and then obviously the people side and the community side as well. So, and there's a lot more reporting on it now, so it's publicly available for investors to see more, and that's obviously coming through more and more as well.
Good. Let's look at final thoughts. Are we looking at a good year ahead, an okay year, or is it still a time to be concerned?
I think to me, every year is a good year, right? It's about trying to take advantage of the situation and what you're in. So yes, there's always challenges, but I guess it's about those people who see those opportunities and look to sort of move with that and accelerate through with that. So I think from an economy perspective, it's not going to be the large growth that everyone would hope for, but hopefully there will be some growth there in the GDP growth. But then again, there's winners and losers, and it's who takes advantage the most ends up coming out best, I guess.
Right. And we have seen that through the membership base, the members who have proven to be agile, changed their business models, gone into new product lines that match what they're already doing. Yeah. They're really the ones that have got through a lot better.
Yeah. So it's so certainly I guess back to your first question, I think we're in a lot better position 12 months on than what we were. Right. And I think now it's, I think the business community is sort of ready to get going and get out there and, and I think that's the sentiment that we're seeing across the board as well. So
good. Well, the best way to get out there, Matt, is of course networking. And we do have our first Sundowners of the year coming up, and BDO is our sponsor. So make sure you come along to Sundowners on the 2nd of February, and we've got the briefing ahead of it as well.
Yeah, look forward to being there. And we've also got, some new senior people that have joined with us. So there'll be plenty of BDO people around to say hello to everyone on the night. So look forward to it.
Excellent. Great. Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks for coming in.
No problem. Thanks.
Thank you. Matthew Cutt, partner at BDO in Thailand. Coming up next, connections, and we venture to the Eastern Seaboard to see how one of our members is making people strong. Stay with us.
DollarSmart Global is the leading Asia-based payments business. We offer flexible online solutions for locally collecting money and making payments to bank accounts, cash payout agents, and digital wallets across Asia. With DollarSmart Global, your money's in good hands. Visit dollarsmartglobal.com to set up your collection and payment solution in Asia today.
Welcome back. In today's Connections section, we venture down to the Eastern Seaboard to meet one of our members in the health and wellness sector. I'd like to introduce Jonathan Sheaf, General Manager at Bench Fitness Equipment. Jono, how are you?
I'm good, Brendan. How are you?
Really good. Now, I've been to your factory before. I wasn't able to make it down for the recording, but I have been there where you are, and I've done a few weights, I'll say. I'm probably overstretching it, but I have exercised there. I really like your business and what you do and the way you tell us about your business as well. So can you start by just giving us a really quick overview of what you do down there?
Yeah, of course. So at Bench Fitness, Brendan, our business is about making people strong.
Exactly. That's what I like about it. It's a really simple focus and you do it well. How do you do that? So
we design and manufacture strength equipment for both the local and the international fitness community.
Great. And so it's not only here for Thailand, you've got a pretty good export market there as well.
Yeah, correct. Not only do we export Bench Fitness branded products, we also white label for a number of Australian, UK, and a number of international brands as well.
Good. So you're in a good industry. The health has always been important to people. It can be argued the last 2 years it's really become a lot more important. Can you give us an overview of the industry as it stands today?
Yeah, so the Asian fitness industry typically follows the Western world a few years behind in trends. A few years ago across Asia, we were seeing a lot more aerobic type and group classes, but now we're seeing the shift to strength and people wanting to be strong. So across Asia, people are wanting to squat, deadlift, and bench press. Today in Asia, strong is sexy and strong is cool.
Right. And that's interesting. And with that in mind, I think last time we spoke, you mentioned even the social media craze has assisted that as well, because people are working out and they want to show off the results of hard work as well, right?
I've definitely seen a change, particularly with Thai people. They're doing all this hard work in the gym, and they're feeling a lot more comfortable, and their skin And we're seeing that on social media, where Thai people are happier now or feel more comfortable to be able to post photos of themselves on the beaches, looking really good and looking fit. So I think that's also, the social media is also driving the craze or the trend in being strong, and strong is sexy.
Good. COVID, as with every industry, has shaken up the world, and the health and fitness industry is no different. What have been the key changes in your industry?
Look, since the start of 2019, gyms have had it pretty hard. We've seen a shift in people wanting to train at home. There's no other options. Both gyms were closed and people couldn't train outdoors. So the gyms that were able to survive through the pandemic, they've either been able to negotiate their rental agreement, they've had a significant amount of cash, or they've owned their premises, and they've also been able to shift their training offerings to online.
Good. And the training offerings are interesting because as a young fella going to the gym, I just went there and did some weights, and that was my focus. But there is a lot more science behind it now in terms of having personal trainers, classes, fitness centres that I believe the online offering has helped with as well.
Yeah, look, I think post-COVID, people are still going to want to train at home, but they're missing the interaction with people in a gym. So the gyms that are going to be successful, they need to offer a hybrid gym membership or a flexible gym membership that enables people to be able to get the benefits of interacting and being on site in a gym, but also the freedom and being time rich to be able to train at home.
Right. And having the trainers and the classes be able to come into their homes as well.
Yes, correct.
Good. So there have been a lot of changes. What's that meant for Bench Fitness? How have you guys done out of this?
We've been very, very lucky. Since 2018, our sales revenue's been doubling year on year. This year, we're expanding our factory operations. We're going to continue to develop locally made products. I think 81% of our products on our website are Thai-made products. And we're also working on at the moment to launch a sales office in Australia and Singapore.
Excellent, because there's obviously high demand there. You quite famously, as I mentioned, I've been down there, you quite famously say anyone that goes to visit you has to lift something. So I'm not there today, but I asked if you could have someone do it for me. I'll owe that person, and I will do it eventually.
Well, yes, that is true. Anyone that visits our factory, they're required to lift either an Atlas stone, so that's a large concrete stone that we use for strongman, or lift a sandbag. So you are virtually in the factory, and I'll lift a stone on your behalf for you. So
and I can lift a stone
first. Oh, so there you go. There's a 75 kilo concrete stone.
Okay. I'm going to have to do a bit of work if I'm to do that, and owe you that back next time I see you. Jonathan Chief, thanks for joining us. It's always great to see an Aussie Thai company doing so well in the AustCham membership, particularly we are really focused on health and wellness at the moment, and your very motto of making people strong is something that we enjoy seeing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shano. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Jonathan Chief, Bench Fitness Equipment based down at the Eastern Seaboard. Coming up next, our community section, and we take a trip way back down memory lane to meet a former executive director. Stay with us. And welcome back. In our community section today, we take a trip down memory lane, almost 25 years down that memory lane. My very special privilege to welcome a former executive director, Lindsay. Kathy, how are you?
Very well, thanks, Brendan. How are you doing?
I'm very well. So, Kathy, you were Executive Director from October 1997 through to May 2001. A lot of good memories there?
Yes, it was a fantastic time. It was just a lovely time to be in Thailand. Quite tumultuous at the start. I came to Bangkok with my husband, Peter Alsford, who was the first Southeast Asian correspondent based in Thailand for the Australian newspaper in July 1997.
Wow. Wow. So, and that wasn't that easy, just the arrival, was it?
Well, indeed, just after we arrived, the Thai baht was floated. And as people may remember, it lost half its value in those days. And Hun Sen in Cambodia, he had a coup against his partner in Cambodia, and also Pol Pot was put under house arrest. So there was lots of news around and lots of things to be thinking about. Absolutely.
But lucky for you, you landed on AustCham store. How did that come about?
Well, I actually took over from Donna Orazio, and I first met her at the 1997 AFL Grand Final breakfast in September of that year. And I heard at that event, she actually announced that she was leaving. And I thought to myself, that sounds like the job for me. So I pursued it.
Nice. And I mean, it's always tough times in any business, and the Chamber's no different, but 1997 was a pretty tough time to take over running AustCham.
Yes, we lost quite a few members at that time because of the difficulties that Thailand faced, and in fact all of Asia was facing, because the Thai crisis sort of snowballed into the Asian financial crisis. But we had a lot of work to do, and I actually helped increase membership back up during the time that I was there, with the assistance of the wonderful Thai team there, and also the president and the board, back to about 254 members. That was about a 25% increase. I'm not quite sure what the membership level is nowadays, Brendan.
In comparison, it's gone up to around 400, but I'd say it's been that steady growth over many years. So. One of the things, so we've had a chat previously, and one of the things that was very pleasing, that it's been consistent obviously for many years, is the relationship between the Chamber and the embassy, so both DFAT and Austrade, and that was very prevalent during your time, right?
Oh, certainly. We had a great relationship with the embassy and with Austrade. In those days, Austrade wasn't as commercial as it is now. And with Michael Abrams and Kirsten Sayers, that was the number one and number two in Austrade. We did a lot of work with them and also with the embassy. And Austrade actually recommended people when they first came into Thailand, so Australian business people, when they first came into Thailand, to check out the Chamber. And so we were kind of a first port of call in those days. And the first thing that people did when they joined the Chamber and they wanted to engage with some Chamber members was come along to Sundowners.
Great. So I'm sure our current members do want to hear about this. It is still Thailand's premier networking event. Tell us about those early days.
Well, then we used to have it in the embassy itself, up on the mezzanine floor, and different hotels would provide the food, and we would get the drinks through a variety of different people. One group was Jonathan Glonegg with Bangkok Fine Wines, and Jonathan is now living back in Adelaide after many, many, many years in Thailand. He came back a couple of years ago, and he's actually in the Adelaide Fringe Festival playing on violin. So maybe, hopefully, I'll get over there to see him.
Oh, that'd be nice. He an extraordinary person, and was a very active member right up to the time that he did go back. Not only Bangkok, which is the most well known, it was during that period that the initial Eastern Seaboard Sundowners were set up as well.
Indeed, the Eastern Seaboard Sundowners was set up because we started to get quite a few members in Rayong, in that area, and that was driven by BHP Steel. His name was Papson. Hardy Papson was the managing director of BHP Steel, and he wanted to make sure that we had Eastern Seaboard events, Sundowners events down there, because it wasn't always easy for the people down there to get up to Bangkok for the Sundowners. And we had lots of events there. I think they weren't monthly. I want to say they were every few months. And sometimes they were at the Garden Beach Resort, I remember. And also Hardy actually opened his home to us at one time, and we had the Sundowners at his event. And during that time, there was a fellow, Peter Cummins, he was a special correspondent with the Pattaya Mail, and he wrote up the Eastern Seaboard Sundowners every time they occurred. And he was an Aussie, I think, from Tasmania as well. So there was lots of good connections there. We also had a school that we helped down there, and we did English teaching, and also gave, I think we built a special purpose building there and gave them a variety of other perishable goods. It was called Ban Khao Huai Mahat School in Ban Chang.
Okay, great. Maybe something we can revisit as well through the office. In terms of the Eastern Seaboard now, it is a very well run multi-chamber where each of our chambers take turns. AustCham is March and July, but the basis of that being so many years ago, it is a monthly event that attracts a lot of people and is very important to all our chambers. On the multi-chambers, we are part of what's called a foreign chamber alliance now with the Americans, British and German chambers, but there were always strong ties with other chambers back then as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we worked most closely with the British Chamber. Greg Watkins was the executive director in those days.
Still is.
He's still there?
He is, yeah. He just had his 25th anniversary.
Wow. Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah, he's always very, very involved in everything, and we worked together a lot. Also, some of the European chambers we worked closely with. I remember Dr. Paul Strunk, who was the executive director of the German Chamber of Commerce at that stage. We worked with them to do a lot of business work with the government, because in those days, this is coming off the Asian financial crisis, the Thai government wanted more foreign direct investment into Thailand. So we worked with the BOI to get things like the one-stop shop for visas and work permits and some changes to the alien business law. Gary White was quite instrumental during those days. And because he was working at Westpac at the time, he had a lot of knowledge and a lot of impetus, and the chamber had a lot of impetus to get those things right. And we were relatively successful. I mean, it was a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, I might say, but we were successful in the end.
Good. And Gary, I believe, was very instrumental in a lot of things, as was Barry Peterson around that time as well with the visas. So.
Yeah, indeed. Gary White and Barry Peterson were very, very active, along with a number of other people. The committee that we had in those days were excellent. All of them were fabulous people and hardworking people. Some that you may still remember, Barry Peterson, of course, and all the work he did at Hellfire Pass. David Wright was very active. John Hancock, of course, who's one of the most amazing men, most amazing Australians in Thailand, I think then and now. He was very active. So we did a lot of things together. We did a lot of business work. We had a lot of fun. We made a lot of connections.
Good. What about the office? We were speaking about being on TV and what we're doing now. You didn't really have those options back then as accessible with our member companies like Lexicon being able to make this happen for us. Tell us about what was email and promotions. We're very lucky now, right?
Well, indeed. In those days, we didn't have SMS, or we didn't have really any of the internet connections at all. We had email, we had snail mail, and we had the telephone. So we sent out regular EDMs. We didn't call them EDMs in those days, but we sent out regular messages over email. We had newsletters. We promoted members' activities. I thought it was very, very important that we tell each other what we're doing. So within the chamber network, that the members knew what each other did. So there was a lot of promotions of the businesses and the services and the ideas that different people in the chamber had. And I think that's one of the things that was really successful in those days, coming off the back of a bit of a downturn in Asia and in Thailand. What everybody wanted was that strong connection and to know who else was there and what could they do and how they could work together. One of the things that we started then was the Business Awards. And I remember one year Australian Submarine Corp won, and they were very impressive in the work they did in Thailand. They actually built patrol boats for the Royal Thai Navy. And we had our magazine, which is every couple of months. So there was lots of ways that we kept in contact with our membership. And of course, the events were of paramount importance, the Sundowners in Bangkok and the Eastern Seaboard, and also the flagship events.
Such as, it's still the biggest, or we claim it is anyway.
The AFL Grand Final, that was a true highlight of every year. And as then, the biggest event for the AFL outside of Australia. And one of the best years for me was in the year 2000, when my team Essendon won the flag against Melbourne. And we were there, my husband and I were there, obviously, at the breakfast, and my son had just been born the year before. So I was riding high. I thought nothing could ever go wrong with young family in Essendon winning the flag. The other great event, of course, was the ball. Yes,
we reworded it a little to the Great Aussie Bash, but I'm sure if you walked in, it would be a time warp back to what it would have always been.
Yeah, well, that was always an opportunity for everyone to put on their glad rags and really have an enjoyable time. Again, we had great support from the hotels, our hotel members, and everyone just got together. We always had themes. I remember one of the themes was Life's a Beach Ball. And we had, I think it was one of the Australian surf companies, I can't think which one, actually gave us a surfboard that we had a little display out the front with sand and palm trees and a surfboard standing there. So, we tried to make it a little bit iconic, I guess.
Yeah. Now, tell you, after over 2 years of COVID locking us down, our members certainly want to get those events back up and running as well, just to connect not only in the business sense, but just to have that let the hair down and connect in the social sense as well. You were very lucky visitor-wise during your period as well, because one of the highlights of being an AustCham member is when it is available, to have been able to connect with very senior people coming up from Australia, and you had two of the more senior people come up during your time.
Indeed, we had the then Prime Minister John Howard, who came to open the Hellfire Pass Memorial. That was in April 1998, and he spoke with the chamber members as part of that trip. And I've got to say, he was very charismatic. He held the room in the palm of his hand, because it was very, very important to him. Things like harking back and thinking about our history and what Australians have done in times of adversity was very important to him. And I think that's also certainly very important to members of the chamber, and probably still is. So that was amazing. And that Hellfire Pass Memorial was a culmination of an awful lot of work by chamber members. And I know that you've had John Hancock speak at one of these events about Hellfire Pass and the long involvement of the chamber. It couldn't have happened without the chamber, in fact. And whilst I was around, Rod Beattie, who was in Australia living in Kanchanaburi, he did a lot of work, and he actually arranged and constructed the wooden steps there, and also sold the original rail spikes, which I've got one, and I'll send you a photograph of it, so that they could do some fundraising for Hellfire Pass. But very important part of the Chamber's work was the development of that memorial and that annual event.
Great. And the other visitor, also very prestigious and very well known to all of Australians.
Indeed, Peter Cosgrove. This is well before his Governor General days. This was back when he was the leader of Interfet in Cambodia. Sorry, not in Cambodia. The leader of Interfet in East Timor. He came to Bangkok and addressed chamber members after that tour in East Timor and after Interfet's success there. And again, another very charismatic man. And I thought at the time that this is a future politician. Well, he went one better than that and was the Governor General. So that kind of opportunity that we had to see those very high profile people speak to us and speak to us about things that were important to us, things that were important to Thailand was very, very special. My husband was actually over in East Timor during that time and had met Peter Cosgrove a couple of times. And my son was born only months beforehand. And Peter Cosgrove mentioned it to me and knew the name of my son. So he'd obviously done his homework, which was very humbling, I think, that he took so much time to talk to me on that level.
Absolutely. We have the Anzac trip coming back this year. It has been confirmed it will be on. So AustCham will once again be organising a tour to take people up for the Anzac Day services at Hellfire Pass. Whenever we advertise it or you see it, you must feel a little bit nostalgic about seeing everyone still going up there and the importance of that tour to this chamber and community here in general.
Absolutely. And one of the highlights was Barry Peterson and chatting to Barry Peterson on those trips, because he was a heavily decorated soldier. The things that he did in Vietnam were amazing, and he was a very young man in those days, only 25. Peter Cosgrove was actually in Vietnam at the same time as Barry, and Barry was senior to him. The other great thing about the Anzac Day events and going to Kanchanaburi was the work that we did with the local school there. There was a Sayok Yai school in Kanchanaburi that we built a library, if I remember correctly, and also took library books, and again did some English teaching. And we tried to get there as often as we could during the year to help with English teaching. And Mark Lawrence, who was a committee member and a Rayong-based international school administrator for Dulwich College, he helped us a lot with the English teaching in those days. And just one more thing on Barry Peterson, who, as we know, sadly passed away in 2019. If any of you ever get the chance to read his book, Tiger Men, you should definitely do it. It's written in his authentic voice, and it's an amazing story of his days in Vietnam.
We still have a few copies of that at the Chamber office, I believe, so we're just flashing that up now on the screen. If you'd like a copy, we can certainly organise one for you. I've read it myself, and it is extraordinary to wonder if you've met him as well, think, wow, I knew this guy. Incredible. So you've mentioned quite a few very important people. Is there anyone else you'd like to mention before we wrap up? Just people who were just the big contributors.
Certainly, as I mentioned, Gary White, who loomed large in those days and for many more years to come. And I'm still in contact with Gary. And that's one of the things about the people that I met and worked with those days at the Chamber. A lot of them I still communicate with. And I found Donna Orazio too just this afternoon. I was enthused to contact her, and she'll be in touch with the Chamber in the not too distant future. She's up in Brisbane now. David Wright of Wright PR, and David and Barry and I all lived in Soi Lung Suan, within about 100 metres of each other. So we used to have informal chamber meetings, can I say, with Gary White, just close to home. Also Kun Sutipong Itipong from Siam City Bank. He was fantastic. He was such a good connection to Thailand for us and did so much work for the Chamber and for Australian Thai business connections. And educator Kunchan Saralertsapon, I understand that he's still quite active in the Chamber. He was always a fantastic person to have around and very active. Max Lindsay, no relation to me, but he was a president in my day as well. He was with Pioneer Concrete, was later bought by Hanson. And the final president who was there during my time was Hugh Mosley, who's with Deloitte. And of course, the team, Kunmu, who's still there with you, and you're very lucky, Brendan, to have her, because she is one amazing woman and made my time there so much more pleasurable. She told me like it was. She helped me along from day one. So I owe a debt of gratitude to her. And the others in the office were Bibi and Pet. And just one last thing I'd like to add about the people during my time, the ambassadors, and we were very close to the embassy. We worked a lot with them on tours within Thailand, and we actually had the first chamber tour to Cambodia while I was there as well. The ambassadors were firstly Kevin Hogue and then Bill Fisher in those really formative years of building up foreign and direct investment and Australian businesses in Bangkok. And then Miles Cooper took over from Bill Fisher.
Wow. It's there's so many things that were different, but a lot of them are so much the same. Our relationship and the ambassadors during my time here have also been fantastic, and the members really benefit from that, and obviously the relationship between Thailand and Australia, which we'll be announcing quite often this year, is in its 70th year. It's the 70th year of Australian-Thai diplomatic relations, which is also great. And just finally, as you said with Kunmu, she has been that rock for the past 25 years. She won't be happy that we're mentioning 25 years, of course, but it's the truth. The British have had Greg Watkins and we've had Kunmu, so we're both very lucky.
That's
great.
Wonderful.
Well, Kathy, thank you so much for joining us. Do you think you'll be up here again soon?
Look, I would love to come to Thailand. One of our good friends there are the Jansons. I think you know Tom Witt Jansen, who was working at AustCham for quite a few years until recently, and his wife, Margot. They are long-time friends of ours, well before we came to Thailand. We're hoping to get over there to see them. So maybe this year, COVID willing, this year or next year.
Excellent. You'll know, of course, you'll come along to our sundowners as a special guest if you're here.
Thank you so much. I wouldn't miss it. I would not miss it.
That'd be great. Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks very much, Brendan.
Okay. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you next time.